Switzerland's Nemo has won this year's Eurovision Song Contest. But what goes into securing enough votes to win? Researchers say there's actually a lot more to it than just the music.
There is always a lot of politics around Eurovision, and this year was no different.
Geopolitical tensions inform how different countries vote, despite contest organizers billing it as a non-political event. And to understand the role geopolitics play, we first have to look at Eurovision's voting structure. The finals are scored in two different ways. First, there's the jury vote, which makes up half a country's total score. Then there's the televote, which is cast by the general public around the world.
Just like an election, there are people from different areas voting, and you are able to track where those votes come from.
And just like in an election, world events can impact the final results of the competition. For example, the war in Gaza led to widespread protests at the event in Malmö, Sweden. Some even called for a boycott over Israel's participation this year. That controversy was reflected in its final scores. Angolan's song Hurricane got pretty low votes from the jury, but high marks from the general public.
The identities of the jurors are made public, so I think jurors are reluctant to vote for an entry that is embroiled in some sort of political controversy.
The researchers I spoke to say this year's voting shows the complex attitudes Europeans have towards Israel and Gaza.
There are those who see Israel as a very diverse place, a liberal democracy with a lot of different opinions, and that the whole country should not be held responsible for the policies of the Netanyahu government.
This isn't the first time a war has affected the final result. In 2022, Kalush Orchestra won for Ukraine because of a landslide vote from the public.
I think it's safe to assume that this was a way of the public expressing its support for Ukraine just months after it was invaded by Russia.
Studies dating back decades show voting blocks tied to geography. Experts told me that it's not just about shared languages, but it's also about shared culture.
People from the same regions in Europe tend to like the same music. A lot of people in Ireland will have heard of the United Kingdom's act, Ollie Alexander, because obviously we're next door neighbours.
There's also diaspora voting, basically voting for your home country. Vuletic said that could have been another factor in Israel's final score, and it probably played a role in Croatia's high public score too.
My Croatian friends and family around the world also rallied behind Baby Lasagna from Croatia this year.
But it's not always about countries voting for each other. Azerbaijan and Armenia have been locked in a decades-long conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. A 2021 analysis found Armenia ranked Azerbaijan last 98% of the time, and Azerbaijan has never awarded Armenia a single point at Eurovision.
There was even the case of an Azerbaijani citizen who was taken in by the police because he had voted for Armenia.
In the 1990s, a civil war broke Yugoslavia into independent, smaller countries. Serbia and Montenegro are among them. In 2004, when the two were still one country, they rejoined Eurovision after years of sanctions.
They received 12 points from other countries from the former Yugoslavia. So voting blocks do not always have to be considered as some sort of political conspiracy. They can also send very positive messages about the relations between countries.
There's a lot more than just writing a banger at play during Eurovision. Do you have other questions about Eurovision Song Contest? Let us know in the comments.